It's time to cook with Susan Beck. Well, I have looked a long time for a homemade baking powder biscuit, all right? Just a nice simple biscuit, no yeast. We have the baking powder in it to help make it rise a little bit. And I've tried a lot of different ones that are just kind of so-so. Kind of went back to using the Pillsbury grands, as you would see in my sausage gravy video. And now I have finally found one that I feel is worth giving a demonstration to you and posting the recipe for. My sausage and gravy video has had a lot of likes and a lot of views, so be sure you check that out because it's a great way to use these biscuits. You could also use these to make like a breakfast sandwich, or you could just make them for a biscuit as a side dish. So a few key things today as we make these. We are going to be using this butter is frozen. We want very cold butter, and we are going to grate that with a box grater. And we are going to also be sure that we use a sifter. This is a key thing whenever using baking powder. Not so much with baking soda, but baking powder has this aluminum bitter taste, and if you get any clumps in your biscuit, you will notice it and kind of go, ugh, I don't really care for these. So, key thing to take care of. Let's look at all the ingredients we need. We don't need very many. For our dry ingredients, we'll be using 2 cups of flour, a tablespoon of sugar and baking powder, and a teaspoon of salt. We will be needing 3/4 cup whole milk, although I have made this with other types of milk and it works out just fine, and 6 tablespoons, not quite this whole stick of butter. So let's start by cutting this butter down to the length that we want. We just want 6 tablespoons of it. My husband will put those other 2 tablespoons to use making some buttered popcorn, I'm sure. Then we're going to use a box grater where we're going to grate this. And again, we want cold butter, and by using it actually frozen, it really grates quite nicely. And I'm getting all these just little curly cues of butter here. I have already preheated my oven to 425 degrees. So that oven will be preheated and ready to go once we get everything mixed together. Now, a biscuit is something that we do not want to overmix, so as we put this set of ingredients together, we're going to want to be sure that we don't overstir. And look at how easily that butter grated. Looks like a pile of mozzarella cheese there, but it is actually butter. All right, I have reached the end, and we will be working that in just a second. Next, we'll use our sifter for our dry ingredients. I'm going to put our flour into our sifter. Set that down in my bowl. I'm going to put in that tablespoon of baking powder. Level that out. My tablespoon of sugar is already measured, and I still need to measure a teaspoon of salt. And I'm just using regular table salt today, but whatever salt you have would be just fine as well. This is an all-purpose flour that I am using. All right, and I have one of these sifters that I just simply turn the crank and everything comes out nice and fine. Even that flour, all the clumps are broken up. And shake it a little bit too, or there's ones that you can buy, these sifters where you squeeze the little handle and it sifts. They all do the same job. All right, one of the reasons I like this kind of salt is it actually runs through my sifter. When I use my kosher salt, that actually usually just stays behind, it's so big. So I feel like my salt is a little more incorporated, but either way, you could just sift everything else and then add your kosher salt. So we have nice sifted ingredients here. And into that, we are going to cut in our butter. So when I say cut in, you could use a fork, or this pastry blender is an awesome tool for blending together doughs. All right, I'm now adding all those grated shreds of butter, 6 tablespoons, into my dough here. To just kind of mix those in and to blend them. And I just kind of push down and twist until that butter is mixed in and you have kind of like coarse crumbs. It gets a little crumbly looking. Now it's time for our milk. Again, I have whole milk today. I've been doing a little yogurt making for almost a year now, so I tend to have whole milk on hand. I'm not going to use that tool. I think I'm going to use my dough hook. But one time when I didn't have any whole milk on hand, I just used our 1% milk, and I happened to have a little whipping cream. So I used like half a cup of my 1% milk, and I used a quarter cup of the whipping cream. The recipe that I saw says you can use 2% milk. And really, I need to give some credit on this recipe to a young man who comes with his mother to my library cooking classes that I have been doing at our public library every few months. And he had enjoyed my sausage gravy recipe, and he looked for some different biscuit recipes, and he found this one and shared it with me. So thank you very much for helping me out there. All right, we don't want to overmix, remember, so we're going to stop right there. I'm going to flour the surface of my countertops. If you haven't noticed in my videos, a couple weeks ago I got these new gorgeous quartz countertops. Oh, I just love them, and they just lightened up my kitchen with this brightness due to the white, and it's a small kitchen, so it just makes it seem so much bigger. It's also going to be a great surface for rolling out things because it cleans up so well. So let's get the last of that dough out of here. Okay, I got a little flour on there just so things don't stick, and then I'm probably going to need a little flour on my hands also. And we're just going to kind of roll it over on itself and then turn it 90 degrees and roll it a couple times. And we're going to do this just like 5 or 6 times, just kind of kneading it a little bit and working that butter in. I made croissants once, and it actually turned out well. I should do those again. And it had that same idea of using the cold butter, and that's what made the croissant so light and flaky. And you get that same thing here with that cold butter. In fact, I can feel my dough is a little on the cool side. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to get this into about a 1-inch thickness, and we do not want to use a rolling pin for this. We just want to do this with our hands and kind of spread it out into a rectangle. It doesn't even have to really necessarily be a rectangle. We're going to be making round biscuits. We're going to cut as many as we can from this, and then we will take the scraps that are left from around the circle, and we'll try to make more. We should be able to make 6 nice biscuits out of this. I got this package of biscuit cutters, and I also use them when I make sugar cookies, and I love them. They come in these bright, fun colors, and each one of these has a measurement on it. So the largest one is the red one at 3 7/8 inches, and we've got this yellow one at 3 7/16, I believe it said. And then we've got this little tiny one that's 1.5 inches in size. Well, today we're going to use the green one here, which is 3 1/16 inches in size. That's my favorite one for this. These come with a fluted side. I'm going to use that side that gives it kind of a roughly edge, or you can have a nice flat circular side. So love these little biscuit cutters. I have a parchment lined baking sheet here that I am going to be putting my biscuits on. So I'm just going to cut and lay them onto this cookie sheet. I did grease that parchment paper. There's my second biscuit, and my third biscuit, and biscuit number 4. We'll re-roll this dough back out, and we should be able to get at least 2 more. Again, we don't want to overwork it, but I do want to kind of get that back together where I don't have all these creases here either. All right, that looks pretty good. We're going to flatten this back out into 3/4 to 1 inch thick there. Depends on how thick you want your biscuits, I guess. All right, I get another biscuit here. And I think we can make it. This one might be barely fitting on there, but it made it. And I'm gonna go ahead and make one more. So I'm gonna get 7 biscuits today. There we go, biscuit number 7 for the oven. Notice that they're spread apart, so if they rise and fill out a little bit, they won't be touching. They're gonna cook for about 12 minutes in that preheated 425-degree oven on this parchment-lined baking sheet. Look at these beautiful biscuits. We are looking for this nice golden brown color to tell us that they are done baking, and we can just see how much these have risen and how there's just going to be nice flaky layers in there. That's really due to not overbeating and using that cold butter. Let's transfer these to a platter. Now, if you want to, you could brush these with some warm butter or melted butter on the top using a pastry brush, but I'm just gonna let mine be with the sausage gravy going on top. We don't really need the butter too. I've almost eaten a whole one of these biscuits here. These are just light and flaky and buttery. Oh, you know, there's a little bit of sugar in there that I think gives just a hint of sweetness, but overall what I really taste is that butter. And my daughter's coming home from UW-Madison, and I'm gonna surprise her with a little biscuits and gravy tonight, one of her favorite things. But she's gonna love these biscuits. They're sure a good replacement for the Pillsbury Grands that we've been using.